was about 2 years ago, late in the evening. I had been driving for hours, heading back home from a business trip. The road was familiar, but not particularly populated. In fact, I hadn't passed another car for miles. It was just me, my car, and the road stretching out endlessly ahead. The night air felt heavy, and the moon barely broke through the thick clouds, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch forever. I had that eerie feeling, the kind that sits in the pit of your stomach and just won't go away. It wasn't the normal road fatigue. It was something deeper, something I couldn't shake. It was like the road was watching me. Around midnight, I found myself on this old, desolate highway that ran through a stretch of deserted farmland. I'd been down this road 100 times before, but tonight, something felt off. The wind was still, the night silent, almost as if the world had stopped moving. I was starting to feel anxious, like I wasn't supposed to be there, when I saw something in the distance, a figure standing on the side of the road. Now, it wasn't unusual to see someone walking along this stretch of highway. It was a remote area, but people occasionally hitchhiked through. But there was something about this person that didn't sit right with me. As I got closer, I could make out that it was a woman. She was wearing a white dress, but it looked strange, tattered, old, almost like it had been worn for years. Her hair was dark, hanging in tangled waves around her face. The thing that struck me the most, though, was how she was just standing there, motionless, by the side of the road. I slowed down as I approached, my gut telling me to drive past. I mean, who stands on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere at this time of night? But I still couldn't help myself. I rolled down the window. "Hey, are you all right?" I called out, half expecting her to wave me off and keep walking. But she didn't respond. She just stood there, staring at me. It was eerie. There was something wrong about it. Her eyes weren't visible, just dark pits, as though there were no eyes at all. I was about to roll up the window and drive away when I noticed something that made my blood run cold. She started walking toward my car, slowly, unnaturally slow. I could hear her footsteps on the gravel, getting louder, but she didn't move her arms, didn't sway with her walk like a normal person. She just glided toward me with that strange, unnatural stillness. Something inside me told me to drive now, so I slammed my foot on the gas, speeding past her, trying to shake the feeling that I was being followed. But then I looked in the rearview mirror. I don't know why I looked back. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was just the absolute wrong decision, but when I did, she was there, in the mirror, standing in the middle of the road, just staring at me as I drove away. My heart skipped a beat. I could barely breathe. I couldn't make sense of it. How could she be in front of me and behind me at the same time? But I didn't stop. I kept my foot on the gas, feeling the road beneath me rumble as I sped down the highway, trying to outrun the feeling that was creeping up my spine. That's when things really started to go wrong. The road ahead, it started to change. The streetlights I had been passing seemed to flicker out one by one until the highway was swallowed in complete darkness. No moonlight, no headlights from oncoming cars, just pitch black. I could barely see the road in front of me. The headlights barely cut through the dark, casting long shadows that seemed to bend unnaturally. My car started to shudder. I thought maybe the engine was acting up, but it wasn't the engine. It was something worse. I heard something tap against my window, soft at first, like a gentle knock. I froze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, until it felt like it was coming from inside the car, but there was no one there. I hadn't seen anyone in the rearview mirror. It wasn't until I looked to the passenger side that I saw her again. She was standing right next to me, her face pressed against the glass, her features distorted and grotesque in the dim light. Her eyes were still empty, dark pits, and her mouth opened wide, revealing a smile that stretched too far, almost inhumanly wide, like she was about to scream. But no sound came out. I could feel the weight of her gaze, the suffocating terror that wrapped itself around my chest. It was like she was pulling me into the darkness with her, as if she were trying to drag me into the void. I slammed my foot on the accelerator harder than I'd ever pressed it in my life. The car lurched forward, but somehow, the faster I went, the further into the darkness I seemed to get. I couldn't escape her. The tapping on my window grew louder, now joined by a strange, low, guttural whisper. I couldn't understand the words. It was like the air itself was trying to speak to me, but all I could hear was that horrible, rasping sound right next to my ear. My breath caught in my throat as I realized I was alone, yet I wasn't alone at all. Finally, I snapped. I couldn't take it anymore. I sped through the darkness, praying for the end of the road, and then, just as suddenly as it started, the lights returned. The streetlights flickered back on. The shadows straightened out, and the road seemed to stretch back into the normal, quiet highway I had been on before. When I looked in the rearview mirror, the woman was gone. There was no sign of her, just empty road behind me. I drove for another hour before I stopped at the nearest gas station. I had to pull over. My hands were trembling, my heart racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something far worse than just a ghost. That night, I went home and told myself it was a nightmare, that I had imagined it all. But deep down, I knew that something had followed me, something that was still out there, waiting for the next victim to drive down that highway.